What's up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hello and welcome. In today's video, we are going to be ranking my top 24 palettes of 2024, and I am so excited about this. We have had so many incredible releases from brands this year, so many so, in fact, that this was extremely hard to narrow it down to just 24. I tried well over 100 eyeshadow palettes this year, and while I intended on ranking every single one of them, I just ran out of time and it was no longer feasible. So a top 24 is what you're gonna get, but maybe next year I will actually have the time to rank every single palette. It is a goal of mine to be able to do so. But moving forward, keep in mind that this video is just for fun. All of this comes down to my preferences as far as color story, formula, and how I like to do my makeup. And just because your favorite is not my favorite doesn't mean it's a bad palette. It just means it's not the perfect one for me. But as always, let me know what your number one palette is down below. I love to hear it. I will have every single one of these palettes linked and listed down below in the description box if they are available to do so, as well as what I am wearing on my face today. I did film this look. It will be going up on my channel very soon, but if you can't wait and you want to know what it is, it will be down there. So as always, if you're ever curious about anything I use in any of my videos here on my channel, always check the description box. I squeeze as much information as I possibly can into that tiny little space. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the top 24 palettes of 2024. Alright, so before we jump into this ranking, just keep in mind that this is the top 24 palettes, so every single one of these is incredible across the board. I have zero issues with any of them. The formulas are all fantastic. They all perform nicely. I don't experience any issues as far as patching, skipping, fallout, anything like that goes. There's no creasing. This literally all comes down to how I'm feeling in the moment, what I'm reaching for, color stories, and preferences. So let's go ahead and jump into this, starting with our number 24 palette, which is going to be the Legend of Ardra palette from Adept Cosmetics. This one really took my breath away whenever I saw it because the packaging is incredibly beautiful, and I love the color story in this one with these really pretty kind of vibrant matte shades down here, and then we have all these beautiful sparkly shimmers up here. We do have these these two tie-dye ones right here that I'm not the biggest fan of, but I do like that the kind of colors in there are big enough that you can get a little precise and kind of pick and choose what you want, or you can really kind of swirl in there and just have fun with it. But the matte formula in this palette is really good for Adept. I was really impressed with the mattes in this one. I did not find them nearly as hard to blend out as I have in the past. I didn't get any patching, I didn't get any fallout, which is something I do normally experience from the brand, and I just really enjoy this color story. I think it's beautiful. It's a shame that this one was limited edition, but who knows, maybe they'll bring it back in the future. Number 23 is going to the Peach Perfect palette from Gourmande Girls, and this was one that I did not expect to love as much as I do because of the color story in here, not because of the quality, because obviously it made my top 24, so the quality in here is fantastic, but I'm not a big fan of these more so like vibrant peach shades. They just don't look very good on my cool undertones, and if I go in and just do like a peach look, it doesn't look very good on me. It makes me look very sickly and washed out, but if I add just a pop of a peach for like the inner corner, lower lash line on the lid paired with these greens and browns, I get the most beautiful looks, and I have really enjoyed this one. It's definitely more so of like a neutral leaning palette for the colorful lover. I love the theme of this. I love that it sticks with the Pantone color of the year, which was Peach Fuzz, and I just think this is a really good release from the brand, and I love this sort of like purple shimmer shade over here as well. I think it's like the perfect touch to this palette. At the number 22 spot, we have the Gloomy Gardens palette from Diva Room Cosmetics, and this was the first palette I ever tried from the brand. I just love the color story in here. I think it's so beautiful. It's so fun. It's definitely a little bit more grungy, but you do have these really fun pops of color in here. Again, these sort of orangey peachy shades in here aren't the best for me, which is why it's falling where it is, because I think the quality in here is fantastic, and these shimmers down here are so incredibly beautiful and reflective on the eye, but I've really enjoyed playing with this one. Again, I like to go in with those oranges and peach shades as like a pop for inner corner, lower lash line, and all of that. But this little quad over here, and even this little quad over here with this more kind of gray leaning tone, absolutely beautiful. The number 21 spot has to go to the Xoxo palette from Natasha Denona. I was so excited when I saw that she was bringing us a purple palette, especially after that long run of neutral palettes that she had been giving us. I was getting a little bit worried as the path that she was going down, but she did not disappoint with this one. This color story in here is so incredibly beautiful. I love how we have these more cool tone true purple shades over here, and then we have these really pretty sort of warm berry pinky leaning shades. It really gives a lot of variety and depth to this palette. The shimmers in here are beautiful. The matte formula in here is beautiful. I'm putting this one where I'm putting it because I like this one more than the ones preceding it, but I'm more likely to reach for the ones ahead of it based off of quality, if you catch my drift. Again, nothing wrong with the palette, but it's gotta fall somewhere. It's a ranking and you gotta get a little bit picky when you do this, but this one was so good and I'm happy to see that she's bringing us color again. But on another note, I saw that she's bringing us a mini palette that is just a matte neutral palette. You know, it is what it is. You can't help her doing what she's gonna do. Number 20 is going to the Boop Oop a Doop palette from Glamlight in collaboration with Betty Boop. Try saying that 3 times fast because that was not easy to say just once. But this palette, oh my gosh, the formula in here is incredible. This is the Glamlight formula that I know and love, and I love the tones in here. It definitely looks like it's going to be more of a monochromatic red palette, but you do have these more like berry shades in here. You've got some neutrals, you've got a black, this really pretty sort of mid-tone brown over here, beautiful shimmers. There's definitely a lot of variety in here when it comes to a more monochromatic leaning palette, and I've really enjoyed playing with this one. But again, it comes down to color story preference, and I'm more likely to reach for everything ahead of this one than I am this one just because of the color story. But I just couldn't deny that the formula in here was so fantastic, it had to be included in the top 24. At the number 19 spot, we had the Hunter and the Prey palette from Blairdale MUA Cosmetics. This is a new brand that launched earlier this year, and this was their debut palette, and I am so impressed with the quality in here. The color story is so beautiful. The shimmers in here are so reflective and smooth on the lid. They don't emphasize texture, they don't crease. I don't have any issues as far as the performance of this palette goes, but I love the color story in here. It is very fall and grungy leaning, but you can 100% get very neutral, everyday wearable looks out of this. You could really smoke it up, get something a little bit more nighttime. You can amp it up with the color a little bit and do something fun. There's just a lot of versatility in this palette, and I've really been enjoying it. I am really excited to see what the brand has in store for us moving into 2025. Coming in at number 18, we had the Dead Roses palette from Bella Beauty Bar, and this was the brand's take on an anti-Valentine's Day palette, and it was executed perfectly. I love the combinations of the reds, the pinks, and the purples in here, but the shimmers are incredibly beautiful. The brand said that when they released this palette, that the color story was supposed to be like the life cycle of a flower, and I definitely see that in this multi-chrome right here. I don't know if you can see all of those flips on camera, but it has sort of like this blackened green to like this really vibrant kind of plummy purple red flip to it. It definitely gives to me that vibe of like a flower that's thriving in life, and as it wilts and just kind of crumbles and dies. I know that sounds like really morbid and weird, but it just looks beautiful on the eye. It is so entrancing, and it's the one shade in this palette that just sucked me in and made me have to have it. Other than that, honestly, the color story doesn't really resonate with me that much, which is why it's falling where it is, because as much as I love purples, pinks, and reds, I like them mixed in with other things that are more neutral, like blacks, browns, greens, and things like that. And it's just not something that I'm going to reach for very often on its own. This is a palette I could see myself bringing in as a companion to other things. At number 17, we have the Moonshroom palette from Lunar Beauty, and this one is so incredibly beautiful. First of all, the packaging is so fun, so cute. I love the mushrooms with the giant moon and the little fairy sitting on the moon. I think it's so cute, but the color story in here, y'all, this is a grungy fall dream, and I think it is so beautiful. It's also perfect for spring with these pops of color over here, which is what really drew me into the color story, because honestly, if you take those out, I feel like I have this color story a million times over, but they got me with the bright, vibrant yellow and this really pretty periwinkle purple shade down here, and the shimmers in this palette are so beautiful. We do have this really pretty duochrome right here. It's like that typical blue-brown shift that he likes to put in all of his palettes, but I've had a lot of fun playing with this one, creating different looks, and it's just a color story that I absolutely love. Coming in at number 16, we have the Nomad Cosmetics New Zealand Stargazing palette, and this was actually the first release of the brand from this year, and this one is so incredibly stunning. I still love this color story to this day. It's one of my top favorites from the brand. I just love the combination of the cool tones in this palette. These are the kind of cool tones that I enjoy. We definitely have a gray in here, but it's only one. It's not 50 shades of gray, which I'm okay with, and I just think it's absolutely beautiful. This was definitely the start of sort of like that pink, purple, blue, cool tone leaning color story that we have seen so many brands do this year, but this one has a little bit more depth, a little bit more sultriness to it. You can definitely get like a nice, deep, colorful, smoky look with this palette, or you can really kind of blend these out, soften them up, and get something kind of light and airy on the lid as well. The shimmers in here are so incredibly beautiful. They are shifty, they are smooth. Nomad has really stepped up their quality this year, and I'm really impressed by that. I love it when they listen to the people, and brands are always improving their formulas and their quality and everything else, and this is just a really good one. I absolutely love it. Coming in at number 15, we have the Weird Nightmare palette from Xoxo. Xoxo is a C Beauty brand, and I have fallen madly in love with C Beauty this year, but this palette really took a piece of my heart when I played with it because the color story in here is so beautiful. It's sort of a pastel-y, grungy, rainbow color story in here. The shimmers are absolutely beautiful. I have really enjoyed every single look that I have made with this palette, but what really impressed me with this one was the fact that this formula doesn't produce a whole lot of fallout. I have found that with C Beauty brands, you are going to get a lot of fallout. It seems to be inevitable across the boards. Not all of them are that way, and this is one of the ones that I don't really have to worry about it. And as someone who likes to do their base makeup before they do their eye makeup, I greatly appreciate that. But this is just one of those color stories that I'm always thinking of whenever I want to play with color or do something a little bit more grungy and pastel leaning. It's the first one that pops into my head, so it absolutely had to be included. Coming in at number 14, we have the Unearthly Cosmetics Night Terror palette. This one was actually released in the brand's mini mystery box that they brought us for Halloween, and I just fell in love with this color story. I mean, when I open up the palette, you're gonna know exactly why. It's those cool tones that I love so much that I was just talking about have been a trend this year. But what I like about this one is it's a more curated color story. You're not gonna get a whole lot of variety as far as the looks go in here, but the quality is fantastic. I love the shimmers in here, and I really enjoyed seeing something smaller from the brand. And as I have said several times at this point in this video, everything ahead of this one I am just more likely to reach for more. So there's nothing wrong with the quality in here. It just really comes down to preferences, and I had to be really picky, but this one is so beautiful. This shade in the middle, this really pretty like pink purple shifty shade, beautiful on the lid, the inner corner. I've even used it as a highlight, and it just looks so beautiful on the cheek. Number 13 is going to the Cradled in Ice palette from Fantasy Cosmetica, and I love the packaging on this one. I love the little dragon kind of protecting their dragon eggs right there. And this was a different format from the brand. This is a 12-pan palette, but look at the color story. What did I tell y'all? A lot of these same cool tones across the board, but what I like about this one more than the Unearthly palette is this little row of here that's more cool tone neutral leaning. It's going to give more variety to the palette, and you can get a lot more different looks out of it. You can really do something more neutral. You can do something more colorful. You can kind of get more variety out of it is really what it comes down to, but the formula in here is incredible, and I feel like at this point, Fantasy Cosmetica really stepped up their game as far as the formula and the quality in their palettes go. Their shimmers have always been incredible, but it's the mattes in here that I find perform better than other mattes that the brand has released before this one, and I just think it's a beautiful color story and a beautiful palette. Coming in at number 12, we have the Poppy Quiet palette from Titanium Foxes, and this is a French indie brand that launched this year, and this is actually their sophomore release, and this one is so insanely beautiful. I love the color story, and here it is like fun, colorful, vibrant. It's a little bit more on the springy side, but it makes me so happy looking at it. I like the depth in here. I love the matte selection. I really appreciate that we got this black shade in here so you can kind of deepen things up, smoke them out, deepen up some shades if you want to do that, but this multi-chrome in the middle is so insanely like shifty and beautiful and smooth on the lid, and I love these iridescent multi-chromes over here on the side. They look absolutely beautiful, and all three of these I can use as a highlighter. I don't know about everybody, but for me personally, I can get away with it, and I've just really enjoyed this formula, this brand, this color story, and they actually just came out with a third palette. It's not in here obviously because I haven't played with it yet, but when you watch my palette collection and declutter video, you will get a little sneak peek as to that color story, and like I said, it's beautiful. But for now, this one is an absolute favorite, and I just love it so much. Coming in at number 11, we have the Burnt Forest palette from Cryptine Cosmetics. This is another new indie brand that launched earlier this year, and this is actually a C Beauty indie brand, and this is the brand that really sort of launched my interest into C Beauty, and as of now, this is still my favorite C Beauty brand. I just absolutely love the color story, the qualities, the shimmers in these palettes. When I tell you they are insanely shifty and just beautiful on the lids, I don't get any sort of emphasis with texture. I do get a lot of fallout with these palettes, not as much as I do from some other brands, but for me, the color stories and the quality in here are 100% worth it. I can just kind of wipe everything off, start over. I'm trying to get into kind of a routine of doing my eyes before I do my base makeup, but you know, old habits die hard. But I just have really loved this one. It was the first release from the brand and it is still my absolute favorite at this point. They have come out with 4 other palettes since this one, and this one's still my favorite. I love that every single one of their palettes does have some neutrals in it, and then you get your colors from everything else. And this blue and this orange in here, absolutely stunning. All right, y'all, so that is going to bring us to our top 10 palettes. And when I tell you that this was insanely hard to decide on an order, I am not kidding you, because these are the best of the best. These are the best formulas, the best color stories. These are the palettes that inspire me the most, the ones that I get excited about when I sit down to play with makeup, the ones that make me want to do something fun and colorful. And I have rearranged these a gazillion times at this point. I feel pretty good about my top 3, but the rest of them, it could all change tomorrow when I wake up in the morning and decide that I don't like this order and this should be here and that should be there. But as of this moment, this is where these palettes are falling. So coming in at number 10 is the Ultraviolet palette from Bella Beauty Bar in collaboration with Deandra Nicole. And y'all, this palette makes my heart sing because it is a monochromatic purple palette. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at the screen going, really? A monochromatic purple palette in your top 10? What is that? I know for some people this is very boring, but for me, I love purple eyeshadow. And when the brand released this palette, I about fell out because this is a dream palette for me. It's got warm tones, it's got cool tones, it's got light, medium, deep tones. The shimmers in here are incredibly beautiful. Yes, I'm 100% going to get a purple look, but I love purple eyeshadow and this palette makes me happy, so it's going to be in my top 10. Honestly, I almost made it my number 1 palette, but I didn't because it's a monochromatic palette and I just don't get quite as creative as this palette as I do from the ones ahead of it. So that's why this one's coming in at number 10, but I just couldn't put it any lower than number 10. And coming in at number 9 on the flip side of the spectrum, we have the Nueva Vida palette from Gourmande Girls in collaboration with Steph's Beauty Stash. Y'all, this color story is so bright, so colorful, so vibrant, so chaotic and fun, and I absolutely love it. I said when I tried this palette at the beginning of the year, this was going to rank really high at the end of the year, and it still does. I open up this palette and I get so excited by the colors in here. It really inspires me. These neons in here are so beautiful. You got some kind of like neutral shades in here where you could do something a little bit softer. You could do something deep and sultry, and the shimmers in here are incredible as well. I think both Gourmande Girls and Steph did an incredible job with the formula and the curation of this palette, and it's an absolute favorite of mine. Coming in at number 8 is the Secret Garden palette from Bella Beauty Bar. Yes, another Bella Beauty Bar palette, but hold on because there's still more ahead of this one. But this one is so beautiful. Yes, it is insanely large, which is one of the reasons why it's going where it is, but I love the shade selection in here. Remember earlier whenever I said that I'm not a huge fan of like pinks and reds on their own, I like to bring in something else? That's where these greens come in down here. You have these neutrals up here, and the shimmers in this palette, they're so beautiful. Bella Beauty Bar does a fantastic job with their shimmers. They do like to give us some more kind of crumbly, kind of flaky and textured shimmers, which are not my absolute favorite because they can emphasize texture on my lids, but they're undeniably beautiful and I will put up with it just because I want something fun, sparkly, and reflective on my lid. But this is a beautiful palette. I do think it could have been scaled down just a little bit more, which is why it's going where it is, but ultimately it's a favorite and I just love this one so much. At number 7, we have the Till Death palette from Jolie Beauty, and I just love this palette. I think the color story in here is so incredibly beautiful. It's definitely more neutral leaning if you are a colorful lover, but I really appreciate that we've got warm tone neutrals, we've got cool tone neutrals in here. I love the combinations of these kind of wine shades, and then we have these really pretty greens over here. This is like a perfect neutral palette for me personally. Yes, it's big, it's overwhelming, which is why it's falling where it is, but I've just really enjoyed playing with this one. I really love the selection selection of shimmers in here, the mattes in here. We do not have any pressed glitters in this palette, and I love that, but we do have some more kind of muted metallic-y shades in here, which aren't absolutely favorites, but they do still look beautiful on the eye, and every now and then I have a hankering for something a little less in your face, I guess you could say, but I just really enjoyed this one. The quality in here is fantastic, and it's a favorite. It's probably my #1 favorite palette from the brand. It's been really hard to choose between the 3 that I have, but this is the one that I reach into over and over, and it's one that if I want something more neutral with these tones, that I am going to reach into. And speaking of neutrals, coming in at number 6, we had the Neutrals palette from Cosmic Beauty. This is the perfect neutral palette in my eyes. I just absolutely love it. Now, if you are someone who truly does love a neutral palette, this might be a little too much for you, but if you love color, this is the perfect neutral palette in my eyes. I absolutely love these pretty purples down here. You've got these sort of grungy greens with like this really pretty sort of orangey yellow pukey tone right here. You've got lots of neutrals up here. I love the pops of the shimmers in here. The quality is fantastic. Cosmic Beauty is another absolute favorite brand of mine. It is a top 5 for sure, and I just think they have incredible color stories, incredible quality, and you just can't deny it. This is a beautiful palette. I have really enjoyed playing with this one, and it's one that I do reach into over and over if I'm not filming and I want to do something just kind of quick, neutral, easy, out the go. I know there's a lot of palettes that I say that about, but I think this is one of the ones I have reached into quite a bit, and again, I appreciate that there's purples down there, so that really gives it a couple extra brownie points. All right, y'all, that brings us to our top 5, so here we go. Coming in at number 5 is the Poison Garden from Bella Beauty Bar. I told you the brand would be back, and this one, y'all, this color story floors me every single time I open it. It is a grungy dream. This quad up here is insanely stunning on the lid. This quad right here, insanely stunning on the lid. These 2 blue shades are so intense and vibrant on the lid, and they just look insanely beautiful. I love the colors in here. For me, these are shades that I love to reach for over and over. It's kind of a weird balance between something like super grungy like this and then something super bright and kind of like super saturated pastel cool tones, if you know what I mean. Like, there's definitely some multiple makeup personalities going on, but this palette just really blew me away. I think this is the absolute most beautiful palette the brand has brought us since the Strange and Unusual palette. That is still an absolute favorite of mine, but this one, oh, it's like the perfect size. I don't see anywhere where you could scale it down. I don't think it could be any more well curated than this, and they just did a fantastic job with this one. At the number 4 spot, we have the Undergrowth palette from Cosmic Beauty, and this palette, I didn't think I was going to fall in love with this one because honestly, I thought it was just going to be a monochromatic green palette, and I'm not the biggest fan of green, but I've definitely fallen in love with it just a little bit more this year. But this is not a monochromatic green palette. You've got some really pretty warm tone neutrals down here. You've got these more sort of chartreusey shades up here. You've got some olives. You've got some sort of mint greens in here. I love the shimmer selection. This is a beautiful color story, and it's one that I just didn't see coming. I did not have this one on my 2024 bingo card, but they just did such a great job with the curation of this color story, and that's really what it comes down to with these top palettes. It's all about the color story because the formulas in all of these are just impeccable, and they're the best of the best, but I love this one. It really makes me want to sit down and play with it and put this shade right here on my inner corner. Coming in at number 3, we have the Barely Basic palette from Glaminatrix Cosmetics, and that's exactly what this is. This is barely a basic palette, but if you are a colorful lover, this is definitely going to be a neutral palette for you. But I just love the color selection here. I think they did a beautiful job curating this palette. I really appreciate that this is set up by columns, so you could go column by column and create a look. You could kind of mix and match, do things like that. I think they have a beautiful gradient as far as the range goes of the shades in here. You have these beautiful sparkly shimmer shades right here, and then this top row is all going to be iridescent multi-chromes that just look so and beautiful on the lid. They are very topper-esque, and they just add the most beautiful sparkle and twinkle. You can dip a brush in there and use them as a highlighter. They do have that sort of sheer base to them, and they just look beautiful on the skin, and the formula in this one has really impressed me from Glaminatrix. I feel like at this point they really stepped it up with their formula and just brought us something absolutely beautiful, and it's a favorite palette of mine. All right, coming in at number 2 is the Chicago Speakeasy palette from Nomad Cosmetics. I have said several times that this is my new favorite palette from the brand. It is a perfect color story for me outside of a monochromatic purple palette because you've got your warm neutrals over here, you've got your purples, and then you have those lime greens in the middle that I just love so much and crave in a look. They look beautiful on the inner corner. They add a really nice pop of color. The color story in here is absolute perfection. The formula in here is elevated. It is so easy to work with. This is probably the best formula in my opinion that Nomad has brought us, and these shades in the middle are all duochromes. They all have the most beautiful flip to them. Some are a little bit stronger than others. I do feel like this shade right here doesn't have the strongest flip out of all of them, but it's still sparkly, reflective, and beautiful on the eye, and I just absolutely love this one. I think they nailed it with the theming, the color story, the packaging with that sort of Great Gatsby look that it has going on, and I've just really enjoyed playing with this palette. All right, so that brings us to my number 1 palette of 2024. Let me know down in the comment section if you figured it out before we got here, but it is the palette that I am wearing on my eyes today. So if you've already looked in that description box, you may know exactly what the palette is, but it is none other than the Harvest of Souls palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. Y'all, this is another palette that absolutely makes my heart sing. The color story in here is incredibly beautiful. This is so well curated. It is bright, it is fun, it is grungy, it is colorful. They really did something with this one, and I feel like the formula in this palette is by far the best formula the brand has ever brought us. I really did not expect to love a Fantasy Cosmetica palette as much as I love this one. Not that I haven't loved the brand in the past, but there hasn't always been a consistent formula as far as the mattes go, but this one, y'all, it is so insanely good. And when I look at this palette, I see so many different looks that I want to create. There are so many different color combinations. This palette inspires me more than any other palette sitting here, and that's why it's ultimately my number 1 palette. It's just so incredibly beautiful, and I don't know if the brand can top this moving forward, but I'm definitely excited to see what they do to try and do that moving forward into 2025. But that is going to complete my top 24 palettes of 2024. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. Let me know if you have any of these palettes. What are your top 5 palettes of 2024? I want to know. Leave it down below in that comment section, but let's have that conversation, light up that comment section, and as usual, I want to thank you all so much for watching my video and spending your time with me. It truly does mean so much to me, and if you like this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up before you leave. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click on that notification bell so that you can be notified of all my future posts here on my channel. I do post quite a few videos every single week, and I wouldn't want you to miss one. But until my next video, have a good one. Bye.